Imagine a military vehicle pulling up to a house in the middle of the night.
The absolute nightmare scenario.
Yeah. Right. An officer and a chaplain step out. They walk up the driveway and they knock on the front door to deliver literally the worst news of someone's life.
Yeah.
Now, imagine the person who opens that door is the deceased member's ex-spouse, someone they divorced like 5 years ago.
Wow.
The biological parents, the current spouse, the people who actually need to know they're entirely unaware. And the military has just delivered a catastrophic trauma to the exact wrong address, all because of a failure to update a single digital web form.
It's completely devastating and totally preventable.
Welcome. You are the curious learner, stepping directly into the unforgiving administrative machinery that keeps the entire military operational. Today, we are looking at what we have jokingly called the Blue Suit Files for the only time today.
Right.
We are taking a deep dive into the massive reality of Air Force personnel programs and benefits. And we are operating strictly under the framework of the Airmen Development and Testing Chart, the ADTC.
Which is, the ADTC is the architectural blueprint for professional development in the Air Force. It dictates exactly how deeply an individual needs to understand a specific topic based on their rank.
Based on their responsibilities, right?
Exactly. Today, we are viewing this entire ecosystem through the lens of a technical sergeant, which is a mid-level, non-commissioned officer, and that requires a Level B comprehension.
So, differentiate that for us. What is Level B versus Level A?
Well, Level A is simple memorization. It is recalling facts, spitting out acronyms, pointing at a chart. Level B is where the training wheels come off.
The actual application.
Right. Level B is understanding. It requires the ability to explain the why behind the regulation. Yeah. To connect the invisible dots between seemingly unrelated policies.
And to anticipate the severe consequences of administrative failure.
Precisely. You have to know what happens when the system breaks.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with the foundation of readiness. Before an airman can drop a bomb or fix a jet or defend a network, the human being must be stabilized. We are looking at the digital gateway first, the Air Force portal. Launched in the year 2000, it established a single point of entry requiring a Department of Defense Public Key Infrastructure Certificate.
Which most people listening just know is the Common Access Card, the SHE.
Right, the C-key.
Right.
But we need to understand the mechanism here. What was the actual problem the portal solved? Why do we care at Level B?
Well, to understand the portal at Level B, you have to understand the staggering administrative burden that existed before its launch. The administrative infrastructure of the Air Force was entirely fragmented.
Like everywhere.
Completely. If an airman needed to review their pay records, they went to one isolated system, or they literally physically walked to the finance office.
Wasting half the day.
Exactly. If they needed to request leave, they navigated a completely different paper process. If they wanted to review an official publication, they hunted down physical binders.
So the portal centralized all of that. My Pay, the virtual military personnel flight, Leave Web.
Right. And e-publishing. All into one secure dashboard, authenticated by the microchip on that SEEK. And listen, this is not a convenience feature. It is a mechanism to reclaim lost man-hours.
It's about efficiency.
It's about readiness. Every hour an airman spends fighting a fragmented, disconnected administrative system is an hour they're not focused on their primary operational mission.
Right. And that digital centralization mirrors the physical centralization found at the Military and Family Readiness Center, the MNFRC.
Yeah, that's a great connection.
The MNFRC is not just some generic help desk where you grab a pamphlet. It is an explicitly defined mission readiness tool designed to assist commanders in assessing the welfare of their units.
It's a massive suite of programs.
Huge. You have the Personal and Work-Life Program for intervention and skill building. You have the Commander's Key Support Program for official unit family readiness. And critically, you have the Exceptional Family Member Program, the EFMP.
Now, the EFMP is the ultimate example of why a Level B understanding is mandatory, because the consequences of ignoring it are operationally severe.
Break that down for us.
So the EFMP is broken into three components.
Yeah.
Medical, assignments, and family. It exists to provide coordination for family members who have physical, developmental, emotional, or intellectual impairments.
So special needs, essentially.
Right. Let us examine the assignments component specifically. Suppose an airman has a dependent child who requires highly specialized weekly occupational therapy.
Okay.
The Air Force must know this information. If the airman is not enrolled in EFMP, The personnel system might randomly select them for a permanent change of station to a remote base in a foreign country.
Where that specific medical care simply does not exist.
Exactly. The family arrives, they unpack their boxes, and suddenly realize they are completely cut off from life-saving medical care.
That is a complete systemic failure. The airman is immediately plunged into a state of total crisis.
They cannot focus on their new job. The mission at that new base loses an operator before they even begin. The family is traumatized.
And the military is forced to spend tens of thousands of dollars to immediately reverse an assignment that should never have happened in the first place.
Precisely. EFMP enrollment prevents that exact scenario.
Oh.
It ensures the personnel database flags the medical requirement and only assigns that airman to locations where the local network can support the family's needs.
So just like you wouldn't wait for an F-35 engine to catch fire in midair before checking the oil, the MNFRC is doing ground-level diagnostics on the human.
That's a perfect way to put it.
But wait, I'm struggling with this. The military is known for being entirely mission-focused, right? Dealing with lethality and global strategy.
Yes.
Why is the Air Force spending resources helping a spouse polish their resume through employment assistance or teaching an airman how to balance a checkbook with personal financial readiness services?
It sounds like corporate HR overreach, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
How does this actually translate to dropping bombs on target?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the Department of Defense operates on the reality that human cognitive bandwidth is finite.
You can only think about so many things at once.
Right. A maintainer working on the flight line cannot be mentally calculating how to dodge a collection agency call while simultaneously torquing a critical engine component.
Yeah, that's a recipe for disaster.
Or a cyber warfare operator. They cannot maintain focus on a sophisticated, state-sponsored network intrusion if they're terrified about their spouse's severe untreated depression back home.
So, unmitigated personal chaos creates catastrophic professional negligence.
Exactly. The financial counselors, the employment assistance programs, the crisis, these are risk mitigation strategies. They stabilize the home front so the airmen can execute their highly technical, highly dangerous mission with absolute undivided precision.
That risk mitigation covers the entirety of an airman's career, literally all the way to the end. Which brings us to the Transition Assistance Program, or TAP.
Right, TTP.
TK is congressionally mandated to provide service members with the knowledge to make informed decisions and reintegrate into civilian life. But the timeline the military enforces here is incredibly aggressive.
It is very early.
Yeah, initial counseling and pre-separation counseling must be completed no later than 365 days prior to separation or retirement.
A full year out.
And the capstone, which is the final verification of the transition plan, must be done no later than 90 days prior. Why is the military forcing people to plan their exit a full year before they actually take off the uniform?
It is about mitigating the systemic, psychological, and logistical shock of leaving the military ecosystem.
The shock to the system.
Totally. I mean, the military provides your housing, your healthcare, your paycheck, your social community, and your fundamental sense of purpose.
Your whole identity, really.
Yes. When an individual separates, all of that vanishes simultaneously. By mandating a 365-day timeline, TAP forces the airmen to mentally and administratively decouple from the institution while they are still safely inside it.
So they aren't scrambling on day zero.
Exactly. It forces them to look at Department of Labor employment fundamentals, Veterans Affairs benefits, and specific tracks for education or entrepreneurship long before the panic of unemployment sets in.
Because a failed transition is a bad look for the DoD.
It's viewed as a failure of the institution, resulting in homelessness, severe debt, or mental health crises among veterans. The 365-day timeline is a forced deceleration to prevent a crash landing into civilian life.
Okay, we've spent all this time talking about how the Air Force supports the family and prepares an airman for a normal transition out of the service. But we must pivot to the darkest realities of wearing the uniform.
The clinical consequences.
Right. The support from the MNFRC is always there, but the airman bears the strict, non-negotiable responsibility of planning for the absolute worst-case scenarios: sudden death, severe injury, and sudden deployments.
The administrative machinery doesn't care about your feelings. It cares about the paperwork.
Which brings us back to that visceral scenario we started with. We have to talk about the Virtual Record of Emergency Data, the VRED, which originates from the DD Form 93.
The VRED is arguably the most critical administrative document an airman possesses.
Bar none.
It dictates precisely who the Air Force notifies if the member becomes ill, injured, wounded, missing, or deceased. It determines the beneficiaries of the death gratuity and the arrears of pay.
And airmen are strictly responsible for reviewing and submitting this document annually.
Annually and immediately following any life-changing event. Marriage, divorce, the birth of a child, before deploying or before any temporary duty assignment lasting more than 30 days.
The consequences of failing to update this form are devastating, which brings us to the Casualty Assistance Representative, the CAR-R.
Yes.
When a casualty occurs, or if a member is declared duty status whereabouts unknown deswayon, the Air Force appoints a CAR.
Right.
The CAR is responsible for assisting the next of kin, but their primary immediate operational burden is the notification window. The notification to the primary next of kin must be delivered within 12 hours of the casualty.
12 hours. I mean, consider the sheer operational friction involved in that requirement.
It's almost impossible to coordinate that fast.
They have to positively identify the casualty in the field. They must locate the individual's VRED in the database. They must determine the physical address of the primary next of kin.
And assemble the team.
Right. They must assemble a notification team consisting of a field-grade officer and a chaplain. And that team must physically knock on a door anywhere in the United States within 12 hours.
And if the VRED is outdated?
If the airman got divorced but failed to update the system, that notification team knocks on the door of the ex-spouse.
Delivering a trauma to the wrong person.
Exactly. The ex-spouse receives the devastating news and the immediate financial death gratuity. The biological parents or the new spouse might find out through a leaked social media post before the Air Force can correct the administrative failure.
It compounds the trauma of a casualty with an agonizing, entirely preventable administrative disaster.
It's a level B nightmare.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The VRED also allows the airman to designate the person authorized to direct disposition, or the PED.
Yes, the PED.
This is the individual who holds the ultimate legal authority over what happens to the airman's remains. Embalming, funeral services, cremation, burial locations.
They make all the final calls.
And the rule for this requires level B comprehension. There is absolutely no requirement for the PAD to be related to the deceased.
None at all.
It is like naming a co-pilot for your own funeral who isn't even in your family. Why would the Air Force allow a non-relative to make those final, incredibly sensitive decisions?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the Air Force recognizes the complex reality of human relationships.
Which are messy.
Highly messy. They frequently do not align with traditional biological family trees. An airman might be completely estranged from their biological parents. They might be navigating a hostile divorce.
So if it defaulted to biology...
If the military rigidly enforced a biological next-of-kin rule for the PADD, the disposition of remains could legally fall to someone who actively despises the deceased, or someone who fundamentally disagrees with the deceased's religious or personal wishes.
That's awful.
By allowing a non-relative to be the PAD, a trusted mentor, a best friend, a domestic partner not recognized by marriage, the Air Force ensures the airman's actual wishes are protected and executed.
But the individual selected has to know about this. You can't just silently write your best friend's name on a web form and forget about it.
Precisely. The person selected must be acutely aware of this profound responsibility.
You have to have that awkward conversation.
You must. An airman must sit down with their designated PADD, explain the designation, and explicitly outline their wishes regarding burial versus cremation, religious ceremonies, and locations.
Because they'll be making decisions under duress.
The PADD will be making these decisions on the worst day of their life, operating under immense emotional pressure and potentially dealing with angry biological family members. They need the exact playbook beforehand, and they need to consent to taking on that burden.
That level of precise planning also applies to the financial fallout of a casualty, managed through the service member's online election system, SOES.
SOES is critical.
It centralizes the service member's group life insurance, SGLI, and the family SGLI, FSGLI. SGLI provides up to $500,000 in coverage for the member. FSGLI provides up to $100,000 for a spouse and $10,000 for dependent children.
Right.
SOES is a self-service system accessible 24/7, but there is a very specific clinical trap for military-to-military couples. If you are listening to this right now and you supervise a dual military couple, this is where you need to pay attention.
Listen to this very carefully.
Because this is exactly where your airman is going to fail if you don't guide them. Explain the DEERS trap.
To understand the SOES trap, you must first understand DEERS. The Defense Enrollment Eligibility Reporting System.
Yeah.
DEERS is the master heartbeat of military dependents.
The ultimate database.
It is the central, unyielding database that proves a spouse or child actually exists in the eyes of the federal government. You cannot just type a spouse's name into a web form.
Right, you have to prove it.
To get a spouse into DEERS, you must physically take a marriage certificate to a rapid station, the real-time automated personnel identification system, which is essentially the military's secure ID card office.
So how does this break the life insurance for two airmen married to each other?
Well, if an airman is married to a civilian, the civilian is added to DEERS, and the SOE system automatically recognizes them for family SGLI.
Easy.
But if an airman marries another military member, they often assume that because their new spouse is already in the military system, everything is automatic.
Because they're already wearing a uniform.
Exactly. But it is not. The airman must still go to the military personnel flight's customer service element, or a rapid station, and officially link their military spouse as a dependent in DEERS.
Wait, they have to manually link them?
Yes. If they fail to complete that physical administrative step in DEERS, the SOE system will not recognize the marriage for insurance purposes.
So the system just rejects it.
The airman will try to certify their SOES record, the system will reject the FSGLI election, and the spouse will be left entirely uninsured. The databases must communicate in a specific sequence. DEERS feeds SOEs.
That rigid demand for administrative readiness extends to the dependents themselves, specifically through family care plans.
Yes, the DAF Form 357.
The fundamental reality of the Air Force is that it must have people in the right place at the right time, worldwide deployable at a moment's notice. Family care plans are mandatory for single-member parents, dual military couples with dependents, or members who are solely responsible for the care of an adult family member.
Like an elderly parent or a spouse with disabilities.
Exactly.
This is where the clinical, operational nature of military service becomes impossible to ignore. The Air Force does not view dependent care as an acceptable excuse for mission failure.
They just don't.
The family care plan is a detailed, systematic contract. It guarantees a smooth, rapid transfer of caregiving responsibilities to a non-military member if the sponsor is suddenly deployed, recalled to active duty, or put on extended shift work.
And the timeline to produce this plan is brutal. When an airman arrives at a new base, they receive counseling, and they have exactly 60 days to produce this plan.
Just 60 days.
If they fail to produce a workable family care plan within 60 days, it can result in disciplinary action or administrative separation.
They will process you out.
The Air Force will literally fire an airman if they cannot prove exactly who is watching their children when the deployment siren sounds.
This raises an important question about the reality of the profession. The military is not a traditional corporate employer.
Not at all.
When a global crisis erupts, the commander cannot wait 48 hours for an airman to call around and find a babysitter. The 60-day timeline forces the issue.
And the commander has to actually sign it, right?
Yes. The commander or the first sergeant must physically sign the form, certifying the actual workability of the plan.
Yeah.
They have to verify that the designated caregiver actually exists, that they have access to the military installation to utilize the commissary or medical facility.
They can actually get on base.
Exactly. And that they have the logistical means to support the dependents. If the plan is purely theoretical, like if the caregiver lives 4 states away and has no car ref, the plan is useless.
It's just paper.
Right. The disciplinary action is not a punishment for having children. It is a consequence of failing to maintain worldwide deployability, which is the foundational requirement of wearing the uniform.
We have covered how the Air Force handles sudden tragedies and sudden deployments. Now, let's flip the coin. What happens when everything goes right?
When you survive the machine.
When an airman successfully survives 20 years of operations, how does the military manage the physical and financial off-ramp back into the civilian world? Let's look at the massive apparatus of post-service healthcare. We must clearly differentiate between Department of Defense TRICARE and the Veterans Health Administration, the VA.
They're very different beasts.
I like to think of TRICARE as the massive in-house company clinic you use while you are actively employed. The VA is the external lifelong health network you apply for after you leave.
That is an accurate functional analogy. TRICARE is the DoD's worldwide healthcare program. It utilizes both military treatment facilities and civilian networks.
Right.
Active duty members generally use TRICARE Prime, which is highly structured and managed. Dependents or retirees might use TRICARE Select, which offers more flexibility in choosing civilian providers, but comes with different cost structures.
But once you transition completely out of service, the Veterans Health Administration takes on a massive role.
Huge. The VA offers disability compensation, which is a tax-free monetary benefit paid to veterans with disabilities that were incurred or aggravated during active military service.
And that disability scale is highly specific. It is graduated from 10% to 100%. It is explicitly designed to compensate the veteran for the loss of working time and earning capacity caused by the injury.
It's math-based compensation.
The VA also manages educational benefits like the post-9/11 GI Bill and the Yellow Ribbon Program. They offer vocational rehabilitation and employment, home loan guarantees, and burial benefits, including spaces in the 155 national cemeteries.
But the real complexity, the level B math, lies in the retirement pay plans.
Yes, let's talk about the money.
To be eligible for a standard retirement, enlisted members need 20 years of total active federal military service, TAFMS. Officers need 20 years, TAFMS, plus they must have 10 years of total active federal commission service.
The evolution of military retirement pay plans over the last 40 years is a fascinating masterclass in institutional financial management.
And cultural shifting. We must understand the 4 distinct eras to understand how we arrived at today's system.
Break them down.
If an airman entered service before September 8, 1980, they fell under the final basic pay system. The math was incredibly straightforward. The retirement pension was simply 2.5% multiplied by their years of service, multiplied by their absolute final basic pay rate on the day they retired.
So highly lucrative.
Incredibly lucrative and offered full inflation protection.
But then the government realized how expensive that was, leading to the High 3 system for those entering between September 1980 and July 1986, and later extended.
Right. Under High 3, the 2.5% multiplier remained. But instead of calculating the pension based on the final month's pay, they calculated it against the average of the highest 36 months of base pay.
Which slightly lowered the lifelong payout by smoothing out any massive last-minute rank promotions.
Then the government introduced the Career Status Bonus, commonly known as REDUX, for those entering between August 1986 and December 2017.
The famous REDUX trap.
REDUX was an incredible psychological and financial experiment. At the 15-year mark of their career, members were offered a $30,000 cash bonus.
Right then and there.
But in exchange for that immediate cash, their retirement multiplier for their first 20 years dropped from 2.5% down to 2.0%. Furthermore, their annual cost of living adjustments during retirement were reduced to the Consumer Price Index minus 1%.
That is brutal.
It was a massive financial trap for anyone who did not understand compound interest and inflation. Taking $30,000 up front to buy a truck could easily cost a retiree hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost pension payments over their lifespan.
And that brings us to the modern era, the blended retirement system, or BRS, for anyone entering on or after January 1st, 2018.
The current paradigm.
The BRS permanently drops the multiplier to 2.0%. So a standard 20-year retirement yields 40% of the High 3 average instead of the traditional 50%.
Right.
But in exchange, the Department of Defense establishes a Thrift savings plan, a TSP, for the member. After 60 days of service, the DoD automatically contributes 1% of the member's base pay into the TSP. After 2 years of service, the DoD matches the member's contributions up to an additional 4%.
The shift to the BRS represents a profound cultural shift in how the military views service.
Because it's portable.
Exactly.
Right.
Under final basic pay, High 3, and REDUX, military retirement was an all-or-nothing cliff. If you served 19 years and 11 months and were administratively separated, you received absolutely zero retirement pension.
The institution held all the leverage over the individual.
All of it. The BRS completely changes that dynamic. By providing a portable 401k-style thrift savings plan with government matching, an airman who serves 4 years, 8 years, or 12 years leaves the service with actual invested wealth.
It empowers the individual.
It acknowledges that a 20-year career is not the only valuable form of military service, and it allows the military to recruit modern talent that expects portable retirement options.
But the BRS also introduces a very complex, shiny object, the lump sum option.
Oh, this is a major level B issue.
Airmen retiring under the BRS can elect to receive a lump sum payment of a portion of their retirement pay, taking either 25% or 50% of their future discounted pay up front in up to 4 annual installments.
Right.
They must submit this request no later than 90 days prior to retirement, and there is a strict recommendation to seek MNFRC counseling first.
Let's talk about the consequences here. It sounds like an incredible windfall to take a massive lump sum of cash at age 38 or 40.
It sounds great on paper. What are the hidden traps or offsets involving VA disability pay that an airman needs to watch out for?
This is exactly why Level B comprehension is required for mid-level leaders. The math here is unforgiving. If an airman takes the BRS lump sum, they are taking a discounted present value of their future pension.
Okay.
But military retired pay and VA disability pay are intricately linked through concurrent receipt laws. In many cases, you cannot receive both full military retired pay and VA disability compensation for the same condition without an offset.
The offset rule.
Right. This means one payment is reduced dollar for dollar by the amount of the other, unless you qualify for specific exemptions like concurrent retirement and disability pay, CRDP.
So if they take the lump sum and then get a high disability rating?
Exactly. If an airman takes a massive lump sum of their pension at retirement and then a year later receives a VA disability rating that would have required an offset from their monthly pension, the Department of Defense is going to recoup that money.
They will come for it.
The airmen might find their future monthly checks reduced to zero, or worse, they might find themselves in massive debt to the federal government because they already spent the lump sum that was supposed to be offset by the VA.
That's why the counseling is there.
The MNFRC counseling is mandatory to prevent an airman from financially destroying their post-military life simply because they did not understand how the DoD and VA databases interact.
And we cannot discuss retirement without discussing the Survivor Benefit Plan, or SBP. Military retirement pay permanently stops the moment the retiree dies.
It just ends.
SBP is the only program that enables a portion of retired pay to continue to survivors. If elected, it pays an annuity of 55% of the selected base amount of the retired pay.
SBP is essentially a federally subsidized insurance policy against a spouse outliving your wealth. The premiums are deducted from the retiree's pay before taxes.
And it has inflation protection.
What's fascinating here is the structural design. The surviving spouse cannot outlive the annuity, and it incorporates cost of living adjustments to offset inflation, unlike many private life insurance policies.
And it's automatic, right?
Yes. Airmen are automatically enrolled at the maximum level if they have dependents at the time of retirement. Withdrawing from the program or reducing the coverage requires the explicitly documented, notarized consent of the spouse.
You can't just opt out on your own.
The government will not allow a retiree to unilaterally cut off their spouse's future financial security without their full legal knowledge.
Moving away from the end of a career, we must retract our lens to look at the day-to-day sustainability of the force. How does the Air Force manage burnout while maintaining a 247 global operational posture?
Through highly regulated rest.
The basic math of leave is simple. Airmen accrue 2.5 days of leave for each month of active duty status. They can carry forward a maximum of 60 days into a new fiscal year. But the rules governing exactly how that leave is executed are incredibly strict.
Extremely strict.
Leave must begin and end in the local area. The local area is defined as the place of residence from which the member commutes to the duty station daily. Why does the military care exactly where you are when the clock strikes midnight on your last day of leave?
The local area rule is fundamentally about accountability and physical readiness. When you are on leave status, you are technically undeployable and out of the immediate operational chain of command.
You are off the board.
Right. The moment your leave status ends, you must be physically capable of resuming your duties. If the Air Force allowed you to end your leave while you were still 3 states away, driving back to base, you are effectively absent without leave during that transit time.
Because if a crisis happens...
If a crisis erupts at the exact moment your live ends, the commander needs you on base, not stuck in traffic in another time zone.
The local area rule is so specific, it even addresses the weekend hack. You cannot end your leave on a Friday in the local area and then begin leave again on Monday to get a free weekend without charging those 2 days.
They thought of everything.
Furthermore, unit commanders will not approve successive Monday through Friday leaves except under highly unusual circumstances.
This ties directly into the Department of Defense philosophy on human rest. The policy explicitly encourages members to use leave to relax from the pressures of their duties.
To actually decompress.
And emphatically not as a method of financial compensation. The military wants you to take 2 straight weeks off to completely unplug from the operational environment.
They don't want you hoarding it.
Hoarding leave for years or trying to game the system by only taking weekdays to artificially stretch a leave balance defeats the psychological purpose of a respite. The institution requires rested, resilient operators. It does not want exhausted, burnt-out individuals hoarding a massive leave balance for a terminal leave payout at the end of their career.
So what does this all mean? We also need to differentiate the types of leave because they carry vastly different consequences. You have annual leave, which is standard, but then you have advance leave and excess leave. Advance leave is granted based on the reasonable expectation that you will remain in the service long enough to earn it back. But excess leave is where the clinical reality of the system truly kicks in. Excess leave is a no-pay status.
Exactly. Excess leave is an administrative danger zone. It is typically only used for severe, unmitigated personal emergencies when an airman has exhausted absolutely all other options.
Because the penalties are severe.
Because it is a no-pay status, your entitlement to basic pay and allowances stops completely. Your leave accrual stops. The time spent on excess leave does not count toward fulfilling your active duty service commitment.
And the medical risk.
That's the most severe consequence. If you are injured while on excess leave, you will not receive disability pay for that time.
Wow.
You're effectively severing your own safety net for the duration of that absence. Dropping into a negative balance carries profound financial and medical risks.
You also have convalescent leave, overseen by the Air Force Surgeon General, which is non-chargeable time to recuperate from medical conditions. This specifically includes convalescence to enable healthy coping mechanisms following traumatic events, explicitly mentioning the loss of a child due to stillbirth or miscarriage.
Which is an important level of compassion built into the system.
The military also manages the Military Parental Leave Program, granting 12 weeks of non-chargeable leave for birth, adoption, or long-term foster placement. But let's look at a sudden crisis. The rules describe standard emergency leave, which is chargeable to the member's own leave balance and usually granted for up to 30 days for immediate family emergencies. But then it introduces the emergency leave of absence, which is non-chargeable, grants up to 14 days, and can only be used once during an entire career.
The once-in-a-career card.
Right. If I have a sudden family emergency, how do I know which one to pull the trigger on? It feels like using a get-out-of-jail-free card. When is the strategic time to use the non-chargeable option?
The emergency leave of absence was designed precisely to prevent an airman from falling into that dangerous excess leave status we just discussed.
So it's a protective measure.
Let us look at two scenarios. If a 15-year master sergeant has 45 days of accrued leave and their parent passes away, they should use standard chargeable emergency leave or bereavement leave. They have the balance to support it. They will continue to receive full pay.
They are financially safe.
But suppose a first-term airman who only has 5 days of accrued leave faces a catastrophic family medical emergency requiring them to go home for 3 weeks. If they use standard leave, they drop into excess leave after 5 days, their pay stops, and they're plunged into financial ruin while trying to manage a family tragedy.
Which ruins their readiness.
In that scenario, pulling the trigger on the 14-day non-chargeable emergency leave of absence prevents them from going negative. It's the ultimate administrative safety net, reserved only for when the standard system cannot bear the weight of the crisis.
And regarding shorter periods of rest, commanders can authorize regular and special passes. A regular pass is your standard weekend or non-duty days. A special pass can be a 3- or 4-day pass awarded for special occasions, recognition, or compensatory time off for extended shifts.
And they have limits.
Right. They cannot be combined with leave or permissive temporary duty to create massive, unaccounted-for absences. The accounting of human capital is always strict.
Always.
This brings us to the final major concept of our deep dive, the total force. Up to this point, we have been discussing airmen in uniform. But the Air Force isn't just people wearing camo.
Not even close.
To truly achieve a level B understanding of the ecosystem, you must understand the civilians working alongside the military and the external organizations supporting them. We must examine civilian personnel programs managed under Section 11D.
The civilian side is highly structured.
Civilians do not have rank. They are graded under the General Schedule, GS, or the Federal Wage System, FWS, based on highly detailed core personnel documents, or CPDs.
The CPD is the civilian equivalent of a military specialty code. But it is far more legally binding. It determines pay, qualifications, performance expectations, and precise appraisal ratings.
So there is less flexibility.
Consider the flexibility of a military member. A military commander can order a sergeant to perform almost any secondary duty required by the mission. Guarding a gate, managing a facility, organizing an event.
Other duties as assigned.
Exactly. The civilian's duties, however, are strictly bound by their CPD. They cannot simply be ordered to perform tasks entirely outside their classification. The Air Force uses standard CPDs across the enterprise to save time for supervisors and classification specialists, ensuring uniform pay and responsibilities whether the civilian works in California or Germany.
And the training and evaluation systems are completely different. Civilians have performance plans developed annually. If they fail a performance element, they are administered an unacceptable appraisal and given a structured opportunity to improve.
Get a plan, not an Article 15.
Right. They can also receive performance cash awards or time-off awards tools a commander absolutely cannot use to incentivize military members. But here is the most striking statistic regarding the civilian workforce. Approximately 53% of Air Force civilian employees are covered by labor agreements between unions and installations.
Over half.
I'm picturing a military supervisor managing a civilian team, and it's like a bilingual manager suddenly speaking two completely different human resource languages.
It is a massive culture clash.
If 53% of civilians are covered by labor agreements, how does a military commander balance the rigid absolute authority of military orders with negotiated union contracts? Where does the ultimate authority lie when there's a dispute regarding work conditions?
This is exactly where military supervisors often face their steepest and most dangerous learning curve. A military commander cannot issue a rigid military order that violates a negotiated collective bargaining agreement regarding work hours, break times, safety protocols, or disciplinary procedures.
The contract wins.
The military runs on authoritarian compliance. The civilian unionized workforce runs on negotiated contracts. The labor relations officer in the civilian personnel section must act as the vital liaison between the commander and the union officials.
So what happens when a civilian employee feels they have been wronged by a military supervisor?
If a dispute arises, civilian employees have a completely different avenue for resolution. They use negotiated grievance procedures, frequently starting with alternative dispute resolution or mediation.
Not the military justice system.
No, they are not subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Therefore, a military supervisor cannot lead a civilian employee purely through positional authority, rank, or the threat of military discipline.
You can't just order them to comply.
They must lead through consensus, strict adherence to labor contracts, and highly precise documentation of performance standards. It requires a sophisticated analytical approach to human resource management that goes far beyond simply giving orders.
To complete our view of the total force, we also look at external community support, specifically the American Red Cross. They provide 247 emergency communications.
Which is vital.
This is absolutely crucial for commanders granting the emergency leave we discussed earlier. The Red Cross verifies the factual nature of a crisis, like a death or a severe medical illness in the family. Why? Because it allows a commander to instantly approve a departure without demanding the airmen provide death certificates or medical records while they are actively grieving.
The Red Cross acts as the trusted, neutral verification system.
They also provide financial assistance alongside the Air Force Aid Society, coping courses for deployments, and reconnection workshops for reintegration.
They are an indispensable partner.
Finally, we touch on recruiting programs, operating under the philosophy that every airman is a recruiter. The system utilizes two specific programs. The Recruiter Assistance Program, RAP, grants non-chargeable leave to an airman to return to their hometown and directly support a recruiter through testimonials and presentations. Then you have the We Are All Recruiters, or WARE program, which grants permissive temporary duty status to participate in events that educate and increase public awareness. The target demographic for WARE is strictly defined as applicants aged 17 to 39 or influencers like parents and teachers.
Both RAP and WARE are brilliant force-multiplying strategies.
Getting the airmen to do the marketing.
The Air Force understands that the most effective recruiting tool is not a billboard or an online advertisement. It is a successful professional airman returning to their high school and demonstrating the tangible, transformative results of military service.
Seeing is believing.
By offering non-chargeable leave or permissive TDY, the institution incentivizes the individual to act as a brand ambassador, continuously feeding the accession pipeline that sustains the entire ecosystem.
We have unpacked the foundation of MNFRC readiness. We have stared down the heavy clinical responsibilities of emergency data and casualty notification.
Yes, we have.
We have decoded the complex financial architecture of military retirement. We have outlined the incredibly strict rules of rest and leave. And we have integrated the civilian and unionized workforce into our understanding of the total force.
It's a massive web of policies.
If you are listening to this and you are studying for that next rank or preparing to lead a flight, understanding these systems at level B doesn't just help you pass a promotion test.
Not at all.
It gives you the operational tools to literally save an airman from financial ruin, from a catastrophic administrative disaster regarding their family, or from a total breakdown in mission readiness. You are the safety net. You are the one who ensures the DEERS database is updated, the VRED is accurate, and the BRS lump sum doesn't destroy our retirement.
And that leads to a final lingering thought based on the architecture of these systems.
Lay it on us.
We've seen throughout this analysis how tightly bound these benefits are to physical locations. The strict local area leave rules, the physical installation MNFRCs, the TRICARE regional networks, the geographic assignment rules under EFMP.
It's all tied to a base.
But as the military inevitably shifts toward an era of cyber warfare, remote drone operations, and highly decentralized units operating far from traditional bases, we have to ask, will this rigid, location-based safety net survive the next decade, or will the Air Force have to completely reinvent how it takes care of an invisible, borderless force?
That is the question the next generation of leaders will have to answer. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the administrative machinery that keeps the mission alive. Do yourself a favor tonight. Log into the portal, check your VRED, and review your family care plans. The mission depends on it. Goodbye.